This morning, we are giving you a glimpse into what it looks like to struggle with addiction and what it feels like for family members who are desperately trying to help. It comes to us from sports broadcaster Scott Oake and his new memoir, For the Love of a Son. That son is Bruce Oake, Scott's eldest, who cycled through active addiction, recovery, and relapse before overdosing when he was 25 years old. In their grief, Scott and his wife Anne created a recovery center in Bruce's name. And Scott is joining us from Winnipeg this morning with more on his family's very personal story, what it's been like to turn a parent's worst nightmare into hope for so many others. It's our honor to talk to you today, Scott. Good morning. Scott, I'm having trouble hearing you just now, and I'm hoping that our connection improves. Can you say hello to me once again?
Hello, can you hear me? I'm speaking to you from my home in Winnipeg.
Fantastic. Listen, it's probably the only time
we just got audio. We just got audio here in Winnipeg, Anne-Marie.
Okay. Well, it is really cold. Scott, listen, I spent most of the afternoon reading through your book, and I would challenge anyone to make it through the pages without it tugging at your heart and shedding a tear. Mm-hmm. The book is so honest. And it's the struggle of the parents that really sits with me the most, the struggle to save your son. I want to start, first of all, with the kind of person that Bruce was before addiction took hold. You describe him as an athletic teenager, good looking, he loved boxing, he loved to rap. What was he like personality-wise?
Well, Bruce had everything. I would say he got the best of Anne and I. He was a precocious child, started speaking in complete sentences around the age of 2.5, and I don't recall he ever shut up after that. Very gifted child in a lot of ways. You know, our son Darcy is a gifted international illusionist, and Bruce was just as talented in a lot of other areas. We would look at Bruce like any parent would look at a child and think, man, this kid's got it all, and he could be anything. But the truth is, addiction does not discriminate. It can come for anyone at any time, and it came for him.
When did you and Anne first realize that Bruce was in trouble, that his drug use had tipped past smoking an occasional joint into what would become a heroin addiction? Because you and your wife, Anne, you were not sticking your heads in the sand. You were very well aware. You had spoken to him multiple times about the dangers of drugs.
We always had our suspicions, but we didn't know a great deal about the signs of drug use. And so we had said to Bruce consistently for a couple of years, if there's a problem here, let us know, and we'll do whatever we can to help you. But we got a graphic, reveal of the situation he was in his late teens. We had been in Nova Scotia celebrating my mother's 75th anniversary or birthday, pardon me. And Darcy called to say Bruce had been assaulted. This is all in the book, so I won't go into a lot of detail because I want people to buy the book. But anyway, we were 3,000 miles away, and there wasn't much we could do. When we got home, Darcy brought Bruce home. We hadn't seen him for a couple of weeks, and there he stood in the full regalia of someone with an addiction problem, and that started the journey that ended it was 19, so 6 years later, and it had become pretty quickly a cycle of, as you just mentioned, active addiction, recovery, relapse.
Yeah, in fact, Bruce went into rehab 4 times, in and out of detox 8 times, which for anybody who doesn't know, you have to detox before you're allowed to enter rehab. So he was in that cycle. How did you navigate it as parents? It made me think of, there's that saying, and I'm paraphrasing, but you're only as happy as your saddest child.
Right. That was actually one of my wife's favorite expressions. You're only as happy as your unhappiest child. And Bruce didn't want that life for sure. And we did everything we could to help him. But how we got through it was that we had a gift as a couple. Anne was the perfect partner for me. And we never argued over anything to do with Bruce, over what we should do to help him. We were always in accord. So there was none of this. This wouldn't have happened if you hadn't given him that $500, or this happened because of you, or whatever. We always agreed on what we should do to try to help Bruce. Because if you don't have that agreement, addiction can tear families apart. We were fortunate it didn't tear us apart. In fact, it probably brought us closer together.
There's a really poignant part in the book, Scott, that you talk about how you and your wife would remind yourselves, no matter how difficult it got, it was always so much harder for Bruce. And your other son, Darcy, used to talk about how addiction is the only disease, I love this line, that you can get yelled at for having. He said it was like standing over a cancer patient and shouting, "What are you doing with cancer? Just get rid of it." And it really speaks to the nature of addiction and mindset. Can you expand on that and the fact that addiction is a disease, but we don't often see it that way?
Well, first of all, the phrase addiction is the only disease you get yelled at for having comes from the late great comedian Mitch Hedberg. That's who Darcy's quoting when he says that. I would hope that the message in this book, at least one of the messages that people get, is that addiction is a disease. It's most often defined as a chronic brain disorder, and it shouldn't be hard to see it that way. Just ask yourself this question. Why would a mother choose vodka over her children? If her brain was wired correctly, she almost certainly would not. A chronic brain disorder, I think, accurately describes addiction. Bruce had it. It was a disease. When we wrote his obituary, we were resolute in our belief that there was no shame in what had claimed his life because it was a disease. And so the first line of Bruce's obituary reads, "Tragically, Bruce Oake lost his battle with addiction at the tender age of 25." And that really was the genesis of the grandiose project that's become the Bruce Oake Recovery Center and will apply to the Anne Oake Family Recovery Center, a project that's now underway.
I want to ask you about the Recovery Center because and again, I don't want to give too much away because there's so many great things in the book, but I want to ask you, so this is a shot of it here. It's a beautiful facility, but something that just stood out to me was the jerseys that hang from the ceiling. I think it's an incredible moment. You describe it in the book. Can you explain to everybody what the significance is of hanging the jerseys from the ceiling? There they are, with the number 1.
Yeah. Well, the number 1 stands for 1 year of sobriety, and that picture was taken probably a year ago or maybe longer. There are 110 jet sweaters that hang in our gymnasium now. We've become essentially victims of our own success because we're down to 1 girder. But I don't know how we're going to figure this out, but we will. But in any case, participants upon gaining 1 year of sobriety, and that's a landmark in recovery, get a jet sweater. There are 110 hanging, or pardon me, 120 now hanging in the Bruce Oake Gymnasium. Each of them, as I say, standing for 1 year of sobriety. So the plan is when a participant gets to 5 years, that sweater with the 1 on it will come down, and one with 5 will go up on it. Those sweaters are valued; they're treasured. You often hear participants talk about, "I can't wait till I get my jet sweater. I get it next month." They get it on what's called birthday nights, the last Wednesday of every month. And if someone has reached 1 year of sobriety, that's when they get the jet sweater. Their families come. The participant speaks about how his life has changed. It's very, very touching. I would say this, the jet sweaters that hang in the gymnasium of the Bruce Oake Recovery Center mean more than they do to the players who wear them in NHL games, because many of those sweaters are the difference between life and death.
Scott Oake, I want to thank you, first of all, for this conversation today. The book is incredible. A reminder, it is called For the Love of a Son, a memoir of addiction, loss, and hope. Thank you for sharing all of those with us today, Scott.
Thanks for having me on, Anne-Marie. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you.
Loved having you. We'll be right back. If you liked that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.